Great, yeah, thank you for the introduction. My name is Alex Skinner, but I'm actually first not presenting my work. I'm going to be presenting on behalf of my dissertation advisor, Dr. Brandon Marshall at Brown University. He was unable to travel to be here with us this week. Let's see. All right, so I will very briefly describe what we call the RAPID study, which was a 2-arm behavioral intervention trial that took place in the state of Rhode Island in the northeastern United States. This study included 522 participants who had reported the use of unregulated substances in the past 30 days upon enrollment. And so we randomly assigned these participants to 2 groups. The control group received standardized overdose education and naloxone distribution at the baseline visit, and then again at 1 month, 3 month, 6 month intervals. And then the intervention group received this same standardized overdose education and naloxone distribution at the same time intervals. But on top of that, at each visit, they received 10 fentanyl test strips and some education about how to use those. We followed participants over time for up to 15 months, and then we compared the cumulative incidence of non-fatal overdose between the 2 groups. So at face value, these results were somewhat disheartening. We actually saw no significant difference between the 2 groups in the proportion of study participants who experienced at least 1 non-fatal overdose over the follow-up period. So in the intervention group, the 15-month risk of non-fatal overdose was about 20%, and the risk was similar in the control group, around 15%. I'll unpack these findings a bit more, but it does seem that this brief intervention involving fentanyl test strips may not have been sufficient to reduce non-fatal overdose rates among our community recruited sample of people who use drugs. I think that part of the explanation for these findings is that there was a decent number of control group participants who were also using fentanyl test strips that they had obtained elsewhere, which creates a lot of similarity between our 2 groups. So from baseline to month 3, we do see this pretty sizable increase in fentanyl test strip use among the intervention group. But then as follow-up continues, the proportions of participants who reported using test strips began to level out between the 2 groups. I think it's also important to consider the setting of this study as we reflect on the trial results. And so fentanyl has been present in our drug supply in Rhode Island for over a decade at this point. Some study participants could have become accustomed to repeated fentanyl exposure in their supply and could have already modified their drug use practices in ways that they feel could mitigate their overdose risk. They also might see low utility in using fentanyl test strips prior to consumption, especially if fentanyl is their desired substance. We also know that fentanyl test strips are just one strategy that our participants used to mitigate overdose risk, and so perhaps maybe like a more comprehensive multimodal risk reduction intervention among people at high risk of drug-related harms could be more effective, particularly in contexts like Rhode Island, where there's already such a high saturation of fentanyl in our unregulated opioid supply. And with that, I will wrap up. I'll thank the participants in this study, and again, my advisor, Dr. Brandon Marshall.